Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your empowerment strategist, producer, and winemaker. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about the 4 ways to reprogram your subconscious. Before we get to that, there are 2 weeks left in January if you're getting this episode in real time. And I want to offer you the holiday special on high vibrational wines to help you celebrate Valentine's Day. And if you've been listening to me for a while, you know I love me a Valentine's Day. Not because of a partner or anyone else, but because of the opportunity to self-love, to love myself, to do things that are important to me, and to give back to myself with no expectation of anyone else doing anything for me. Of course, it's nice when they do, but I do not expect it nor demand it. So if you might want to treat yourself, or you and your partner, or you and a group of people, I'm still offering the holiday 30% off the starter pack, which is 1 of each, 1 blend and 1 rosé. Go to highvibrationalwines.com, use the code HOLIDAY30, all capital letters, HOLIDAY30, to get 30% off the starter pack by January 31st, in time for you to receive it and enjoy it on Valentine's Day. So today's episode was inspired by a course that I took with Dr. Bruce Lipton, a workshop that I did in Sedona, Arizona in August of 2023. So just maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And one of the things that Bruce is great at is explaining the what. The what's the problem? What's the history? What did we learn? What happened next? Where did we learn this from? What happened next? He does a lot of the what, and it's very important work, and I encourage anyone who has the opportunity to understand it and learn it to do it. His first book, The Biology of Belief, was a game changer for conscious work and for medicine, actually, because this is when his pioneering work of epigenetics came online. Because The Biology of Belief is a book that basically explains how your beliefs, what you believe, how you see the world, how you interpret the world, affects your biology, how it changes your genetic expression. So prior to Biology of Belief, the medical establishment, and still today, a lot of them do, blame your body, blame your reactions, blame your things on your genetics. And literally in this book and in his work, Dr. Bruce Lipton will change and show you how that is absolutely not true. There's only, I think, 5 or 6 conditions that we can blame on genetics. Everything else is about epigenetics. He took a group of cells, and they were the same kinds of cells, and he put them in 3 petri dishes. And each petri dish had a different environment that it was in and exposed to. And each dish ended up growing different things. One was bone, one was muscle, and I forget what the other one was. But it was literally taking the same kind of cell, putting it in different environments, and seeing how it reacted. So your genes don't control what you think they control. Epigenetics, which is the science above genetics, is really our environment. Our environment, our beliefs, our emotions. And of course, there are physical things in the environment from toxins and whatnot that absolutely can help and hurt expression of your genes. But ultimately, he is proving through epigenetics how this is not true. So Biology of Belief was his first book. Spontaneous Evolution is his second book. And I'll just share quickly a story about that I want to plant in your brain if you haven't heard that episode. There is a story about a man who has schizophrenia. And I guess in his, I don't know if it's his regular or longer term personality, he is deathly allergic to dogs. And I don't remember who was studying him, but in his other personality, not allergic to dogs at all. Able to have a dog, enjoy dogs, roll around with dogs, be licked by dogs, be in dog hair, and nothing physical happens. Which should outline to you that a lot of our reactions in our body aren't physical. They are neuroprogrammed. They are biochemical because of the belief, because of the environment, because of the emotion, because of the stimulus that the body then had to respond to. So one day I'll do an episode on that and bring other people on to talk about that. When it comes to pet allergies, that's for me. And I'm not talking about toxins in the air or genetic modification. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about things that weren't altered necessarily, like when you're allergic to a plant that doesn't have pesticides on it, that it's in its genetic, original form, and or cats and dogs and hair and things like that. Those kinds of things really can be rooted, and a lot of times are rooted in an emotional response, not a physical response. But I know a lot of people either don't know that or don't believe that. So they just continue to say, well, this is the problem. These problems are fixable in my eyes. I've seen it happen. I have some methods and ways. I can't make any promises, but I can say with the story of the guy with schizophrenia, it's pretty clear that if in one personality, he's deathly allergic to dogs, and in another personality, that same physical body is no longer allergic to dogs, that the key is not in our genes or in our body, in our DNA, it's in our brain. So today we're going to talk about the 4 ways to reprogram your subconscious. Of course, not necessarily to heal any allergies per se, but I just wanted to give you the power of this work. On each line item, because this was a slide that Dr. Bruce Lipton had in his presentation, and I took a picture of it, and he spends a lot of time on the what, like what's the problem, what did we learn, on the history, on why we believe what we believe, where it came from, and how it's been evolving, and we lacked information and blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't spend a lot of time on the how. And of course, most of you know by now, I'm all about the how. So how do we change it? Cool. Yes. This is the problem, but I would like a solution. How do we change it? So these each line item, the 4, actually has 2 things on it. So this could have been 8 ways to reprogram your subconscious, but I think he categorized them sort of in like tools. So the first 2 are sort of alike. So number 1 is hypnosis and subliminal programs. Now, subliminal programs would be things like binaural beats, and you've heard us talk about that on the show. And I'm going to bring you information about things I've experienced, things I've studied, things I've witnessed and observed over the last 20 years, and knowing that each tool will affect people differently. So there may be a tool that is life-changing for you in one area, but maybe doesn't work as well in other areas. And so I want you to not think of this list as each thing is going to be as powerful for you. It's why I created the roadmap to emotional healing, because depending on your path, each tool would be used at a different place on your path, depending on what you're dealing with and what you're responding to. So just know that there is another step in assessing which tool is right for you. But of course, there's no harm in trying all of them. Just know that when you try something, don't give it all the power to change everything about your life, because the likelihood that one thing is going to change everything about your life is unlikely. All right. So knowing the tool that you're choosing and having an expectation about what it can do for you. It's like back when I was a trainer, when people would do, let's say, mat Pilates or the Pilates on the machine. Pilates by itself is not necessarily a weight loss focused exercise. So if someone is going into Pilates and expecting to lose a lot of weight, they may not, because that's not what Pilates is for. Same thing with Hatha yoga, okay? Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to lose weight. It just means understand what the benefits of the tool you're using are. So let's talk about these tools. All right, so hypnosis and subliminal programs. I love hypnosis. 12% of your brain is conscious. That's the 12% right now that's listening to this podcast. That is the 12% right now that's also thinking about what you're doing at work today or dinner tonight or what your plans are later as you're driving to work or you're exercising or you're doing errands, okay? So that's the 12%. The 12% you can hear. 88% of your brain is subconscious or unconscious. And that is where all of your beliefs get stored and from growing up, from childhood, things that your brain assessed without your conscious contribution, like having an observation of something and then making the decision in your brain subconsciously that you aren't important because that person didn't do something, say something, or however they were for you. Your subconscious is a really powerful tool, obviously, to work with because on the percentages, it's more. It's 88%. And for a very long time, I would spend a lot of time on the 88% with myself and with clients because, again, it's 88%. So, of course, if the majority of our beliefs are in our subconscious, why wouldn't we? Here's where the separation for me comes in. And I'll give you an example of a really powerful hypnosis. I think hypnosis can be really great short-term for getting over smoking, for some weight loss stuff, for being afraid of getting on an airplane. I think that hypnosis can be transformative for different issues, but I don't think it's going to be effective for every issue every time. For me, hypnosis was the most effective. I've worked with several people over the last 24 years that have all done personally guided hypnosis sessions for me. And you can buy some online, and those are probably good too, depending on the source. And, I would definitely ask for a referral. But for me, I've done one-on-one sessions and had them record the session and then re-listen to them and use them later. When in my last relationship, hypnosis was the most transformative, was where in the beginning, not the beginning of the relationship, but beginning of me working towards the end of taking responsibility for what I brought to the table. In my last relationship, when I would get yelled at, I would get defensive. Now you may be thinking, well, that sounds kind of normal. I'd get defensive too. Well, the truth is when you get defensive, it means you're triggered, because that's not the only option of how to respond. With all that I've done and all that I know, I could have just been an observer. I could have observed the pain, the discomfort. I could have been listening for the need and the feelings, but instead I'd get triggered and then I would defend myself. So when you're in a couple or a partnership or whatever, could be at work, could be in a family, if you're getting defensive, that means you're triggered too. So when I looked at, well, what could I do about it? I thought, well, maybe I'll see a therapist, which I sought somebody out who did EMDR and hypnosis. So that way she can help me do things I can't do for myself, which actually you probably can do some self-hypnosis, but let's just for now say that it's easier to go work with somebody else. So I found her and we immediately did some EMDR, which we're going to get to because that's the third one down. But we did hypnosis and we did it specifically for my situation. And we would go into a session and we'd talk for a little bit and then we would do the hypnosis. She'd record it. I'd take it home and I would use it every day or at least 5 days a week. And within probably a month, my situation had a dramatic change because the hypnosis was calming my nervous system. The hypnosis was detaching me a little bit from being responsive. It was creating some conscious space. It was grounding me in different ways. And so because my energy in life in general was less reactive based on this hypnosis, this meditation, literally I was doing it as a practice every day to, embody, to really create those neural pathways. It didn't take long for me to recognize that the argument stopped happening and that I wasn't reactive. So I thought that was extremely successful. Now, I worked with her for maybe a couple of years and we would do hypnosis on other areas. And by that point, those weren't healing the situation because it wasn't the right tool. It helped. It can always help you feel better, but it wasn't the right tool to move me to the next level of healing. It was the right tool at the beginning, and it made a lot of progress in my own nervous system, in my own healing, and my own energy, and therefore affected the energy around me. So I am a very big fan of hypnosis. I only caution that hypnosis can't replace and won't necessarily replace the 12% of your conscious brain. I have seen a lot of people go through healers and sessions with people and do many, many sessions, come out of it, and maybe they're calmer and generally happier and feel better. But then I see them in the same situation react the same way. Maybe it's not the same degree, but they're still looking at the world and interpreting things the same way, which is why for me, that 12% of your conscious brain is still very important. It's the computer. If I don't change how I interpret life, if I don't change my point of view, then I'm going to reenact another pattern, and it may never get as bad as it was initially, but to me, the conscious brain is equally as important as the subconscious brain. Now, subliminal programs, the binaural beats. Binaural beats are really, really easy to use. And I absolutely had an amazing experience years and years and years ago when with an ex-boyfriend, I could see, my conscious brain could see a pattern of me acting like I said to myself, you act like you're afraid he's going to forget you. I was writing poetry. I was buying him things. I was framing pictures. I was like making sure I could see it. I could see the pattern. But if you would have asked me, JJ, do you feel that he's going to forget you? I would say, no, that's ridiculous. And I would tell you the 10 reasons why. And then I did this binaural beat program and I laid down and I put it in my ears And I would hear, and at the time, and I still have the same kind. I still work with the same company. I mean, I have a couple companies, but my favorite, it's like rain in the background. And then they specifically do tones that can activate different parts of your brain. So I laid there for I don't even know how long. And some of you know this story. And I'm listening to the binaural beats. It's just rain. It's relaxing. I'm hearing these beats, these tones. And some tone hits a brain nerve, and it drops down right into my gut, if you will. And that belief system that I didn't think I believed, I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like he'd forget me. I didn't believe that. All of a sudden, I started crying. And I was like, oh my God, I do. I am afraid he's going to forget me. My conscious brain couldn't wrap my head around it, but yet I could see the pattern. I could see my behavior, but I couldn't access the feeling. So that binaural beat helped me access the fear that I had that I was in denial about. I wasn't trying to deny it. My logic brain said, no, of course not. Here are the 10 reasons why he won't forget you. So I also have seen it work really well with Doug. When Doug has been in a very anxious state most of his life, in all different areas of life. He's lived in a certain high level of anxiety, but didn't know it, and had his first anxiety attack in 2015. We weren't together. I didn't know him then. Fast forward, it's COVID, although that wasn't the thing. He had just had an emotional reaction to someone with his dad. Like his dad had passed a long time ago. And it was the night before I was leaving to go to my first retreat for the mastermind in 2020 in Atlanta. And he woke up and it was almost like he was choking or he couldn't breathe. And it was very jolting. And I was very nervous when it first started happening. And I was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? How do I help you? And Doug is definitely afraid of throwing up. In fact, I don't think he's ever thrown up. And if he has, it was so traumatic, he never wanted to do it again. So I thought he was just avoiding throwing up. Like he had something and he was trying not to throw up. So once I determined he wasn't having a heart attack and he wasn't going to die, I kind of eased up and I was like, okay. So we tapped a little bit and we sort of massaged his throat area and put a towel on his head and it kind of calmed him down. And I didn't know what it was. And I thought, okay, that was a freak thing about him not wanting to throw up. All right. 6 months later, we're at a podcast mastermind that we're running in Palm Springs. And a bunch of therapists were our clients. And Doug decided to ask them what he needed to do to fix himself or what was wrong with him. It was a very weird thing. He sat there in front of everybody on the hot seat when it was his turn. He said, okay, so what's wrong with me? And they all looked at him like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? He wanted them just to sort of pick him apart, which was kind of silly. But anyway, they asked questions and they dug a little bit because that's what he asked for. And then that night it happened again. That night he woke up in the middle of the night. He couldn't breathe. He was kind of choking in a way. He wasn't really choking, but he was having this reaction. And I was like, what is this? So on the drive home, I asked him, I said, what, has this happened before? He goes, oh yeah, this used to happen all the time. I said, oh, well, this isn't you choking. This is a panic attack. He's like, oh yeah. I was like, well, I didn't know that. And so next time it happens, I'm going to help you very differently. And he said, well, why do we have to wait till next time? I thought, we don't. So that's when I remembered this powerful binaural beat program, and I had him buy one. And the one that he bought is a 6-month program, and there are 2 audios. And the first one you listen to for 2 months, and the second one you listen to for 4 months. And I did it along with him. And I saw him start to change. I saw his nervous system calm down. See what Doug does, he'll over positivity something. He'll decide, or this is what he used to do. If he have a negative thought, he would bat it away and be overly positive in order to not allow that thought to get bigger. Well, the problem with that is that then you repress it. You have negative thoughts. You have negative feelings. It's about processing them, not repressing them. And you don't have to, just because you have it doesn't mean you live it. Doesn't mean that you become the thing. It just means you're human. And of course, you have contrast. And of course, you're going to have fears and triggers and things. So throughout the years, he just repressed those things. And as these binaural beats were starting to do work on him, his anxiety level came down even lower. And I saw him allow negative emotion. I was so pleased. So that, however, after that 6 months, and maybe we used it for an entire year, and that was a couple of years ago, of course. So that stopped working. It did what it did. And now he is where he is, but it wasn't going to work forever. And the binaural beats weren't going to fix everything, but they made a really, really nice shift in his anxiety level and in him allowing himself to be in his body and feel his feelings. So kudos to the subliminal programs and hypnosis. Again, each tool has a time and a place and effectiveness, and they're always good to try. Just know what you're going to expect from them. All right, that was one, even though there were kind of two things. So the second way to reprogram your subconscious, Dr. Bruce put habit and mindfulness. So here's my thought about habit and mindfulness. I think that we know meditation, there have been studies that it can change your brain. If you commit to doing X amount of meditation over time, it will absolutely make shifts in your brain, sort of like that subliminal program did with the binaural beats. The thing with habit and mindfulness, though, to me, is still the energy underneath. If you guys have not heard that episode that I did it last year, please listen to the energy underneath, because you can do a habit from a place of scarcity and fear. And that ultimately is going to enhance and anchor that fear and sadness and anger or whatever you're reacting to. That is why, for me, going back to the 12% of your conscious brain, I ended up developing and creating the Rewiring Your Core Wound Pattern program, because we are creating and deciding on how to make new habits and mindfulness based on data. And that data would be, what are your core wounds? Because if you don't know what those are, you may not be choosing the right new habits. And you may be mindful, but you may not have any connection or understand why you're making the choices that you're making. So to me, going back and quickly assessing and outlining, creating your core wound map, which I have created, which shows you your top 3 core wounds, what emotions come up for you, how you act and behave, all of the ways that you keep those core wound patterns alive in your own habits that you do every day. And then how do we take proactive action to change those? Those, to me, that whole program falls under habit and mindfulness. But I don't think habit alone and mindfulness alone is enough. Because again, if it's not based on a reason that you're choosing this habit, and if that isn't in alignment with healing a wound, then you may still continue to repeat patterns because you're not actually healing the deepest core wound. So if that makes sense, and if that's something you're interested in, that's the 12% of your conscious brain. However, we do over time, because of habit and mindfulness, end up reprogramming your subconscious. I have another rewiring happening starting in mid-March, and it's a small group coaching. You're going to hear from the last group who did it last year next week. So I'd love, if you're interested, to go to jjflazanes.com/rewire, because you will, even just going through the program and getting the map and understanding, every time you're triggered, you can go back and understand why. And then that informs your decisions about what habits to change and what things you have to proactively do to heal them. You're not going to heal everything in 3 months. You're not going to heal everything in 6 months, but you're going to make significant changes, and you're going to feel calm, confident, and empowered to know how to change, because you understand where it comes from. You're not guessing. You're not wondering why you keep ending up in the same situation over and over again, because you see it. It's a core wound, okay? It's like literally laid out for you. It's very, very clear. All right, so number 3 is super learning and energy psychology. Energy psychology recognizes the powerful connection between the mind and the body. So it's also known as cognitive somatic practices. Cognitive meaning brain, somatic meaning body. So we're connecting the mind and the body, and all kinds of different techniques of your energy system. So anything from meridian work and chakras and biofields. This is where EFT and EMDR come into play. So it's really working with our energetic fields and changing our energies, and again, having it be in connection with our body. So one of the things I love about the super learning, and super learning is kind of the non-woo-woo way of saying energy psychology. I have learned, and applied energy psychology in environments that aren't woo-woo, like where you're learning something new. But it's about what techniques that you use, physical techniques, from stances to clapping, to raising your hand, to dancing, to, again, stretching into new poses that sort of rewire your brain to remember and embed the information that you're learning in that moment. So super learning can be done in environments of, workshops and big, I'm sure Tony Robbins uses super learning. Energy psychology, we're going to take a little bit down the line of more individual personalized energetic work, and it can be done with EFT or EMDR. So let me quickly explain in case you don't know what those terms are. EMDR means or stands for eye movement desensitizing reestablishment. I did a whole podcast on it many years ago. And the last therapist that I worked with used EMDR. In fact, I sought her out because I wanted to do EMDR because I didn't know I had another option at the time. I do now. But EMDR can be administered in a couple different ways. There's like headphones where there are beats that go back and forth between the hemispheres of your brain. There's pulses in the hands where you hold a device and it just pulses and you feel it in your hands, like buzzes. And then there's the application that I love the most, which is where the therapist or practitioner is talking with you and your eyes are open and they use their fingers and you, with your eyes, follow the fingers. Now, for me, my personality as an auditory processor, that was the most effective for me. So I loved with the eyes open and following the fingers. Now, there's a whole way to do it, but I'm not going to explain that because, again, I did a podcast about it years ago. So go search it, EMDR, and you would need to do it with a practitioner or a therapist. And it is very, very effective. And there's another way. So EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, is also tapping. So you probably have heard it as tapping. It focuses on tapping on meridians of the body to help make change and create new neural pathways. Now, EFT can be done by yourself, and there are a lot of people that teach it and a lot of courses, and there's a book and the whole thing. However, I will tell you that I do it on myself, and I have done it on myself, but I also do EFT with clients because I also do a different kind of EFT. I do a JJ version. And what that means is I take your core wounds and we do EFT on something deep, on something meaningful, on something that's a root. So hopefully that when we pull out the root, we also pull out all of the other things that go along with that root, and we have a opportunity for greater change. People tap on things like my stomach, like a stomach ache or a shoulder pain, and I have known them to have those things dissipate and go away. It's absolutely wonderful work, EFT. I like to use EFT a little bit deeper, and I want to help the person basically reestablish a new pattern when you have that thought, that pain, that emotion. So anyway, EFT is also part of energy psychology. So that would be line number 3 of the 4 ways to reprogram your subconscious: super learning and energy psychology. Now, the last one, major life experience. And he had in parentheses spiritual. So in life, we all have major life experiences, and most of the time we didn't plan for them. They just sort of happened, and they were mostly traumatic, and therefore caused us to change our brain, change our beliefs, maybe created some fear or some other emotions that are negative, and they stayed with us. So just think about yourself. Think about a traumatic event that was negative that you still react to life strongly because of. Now, in this 4 ways to reprogram your subconscious, this is an invitation to create a positive major life experience. Not that the feelings are positive, but that the result is positive. So this is where the plant medicine comes into play. This is where I'm really enjoying the results of the plant medicine. Ashley was on the show a couple weeks ago. We did her results and her case study. She started out as a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10 for her anxiety. And after a heroic dose, she was at a 2. And she was at a 2 for a couple of weeks until she climbed up to a 4 or 5 because of the holidays and not having childcare. But still, 5 versus 12 is still a pretty big jump. And I checked in with her before recording this, and she's still back down to a 4. And again, she still doesn't have help yet with her son, and she's trying to juggle work and stuff. But generally, everyone's calmer, happier, and more peaceful. And it's exactly what she wanted. And we're talking, it's been 2 months. Now, she is tasked to continue that with other methods that can continue to strengthen that neural connection and those new ways of being. But for me, when you have something powerful like San Pedro or psilocybin or whatever plant medicine that you're dealing with, and again, done in an intentional way that is for healing purposes, not recreational. I'm doing things for the exploration, for the healing, you're getting a blast of new neural pathways being opened up simultaneously in an intensity that is much different than some of the other things that we're doing here. When you think about the intensity of how many neural pathways am I actually creating when I meditate, I don't know it. I'm sure there's somebody that has studied it, but let's just say, based on the fact that if you're doing it for 15 minutes or an hour and you do it every day, little by little, because it's 1 hour out of 24 hours. And again, it's not super uncomfortable or super, you're not stretching to, some people, you do stretch to learn how to meditate. You stretch to like calm down and be calm. And over time you get better and better at it. And yes, but when we think about like the intensity level or the momentum, it's not a lot. That's why it's kind of easy to do. And it's easy to do and it's effective. But if you're going to a situation, and this is where the stories of cancer patients with Naisha came into play. And when I saw and heard about people that had outlived their diagnosis, because if you think about someone who's dealing with a cancer diagnosis and who's actively cancering and possibly in a terminal state, you're so out of alignment and out of your body. There's so much negative momentum and fear happening that there is zero chance. I shouldn't say zero chance because there are chances, but in that state, when you're in fear, you're not in parasympathetic. Your body can't heal itself in that state. But having your brain be opened and redirected to not necessarily positive, but to allow out the emotions, to allow in the experience, to open up pathways that you aren't living because you're so in a negative worry state where the body's in fight or flight all the time, that can be extremely healing and life-changing. So creating a major life experience. Now, it doesn't have to involve medicine. You can go on a walkabout and camp out with nothing on a mountain for a month or a week and live off the land and fast and put yourself in an extreme major life experience. And that will also change your life. That will also reroute patterns. Absolutely 100%. So if the major life experience, the major spiritual, evolving, expanding experience is something that you're looking for, I have stuff that I can offer you there too. So if you've listened to this and you're sort of interested in maybe doing some of this work with somebody or to be held accountable to doing it, obviously you've already heard me talk about habit and mindfulness and the importance that I think it is in understanding and creating your core wound map. Because without the map, all of the choices that you're making about your healing journey are kind of guessing. And if you don't understand why you're choosing what you're choosing, you can't really necessarily assess if it's working. Or you might get bummed out that it helped a little bit, but it didn't heal everything. And that's because all these things aren't necessarily meant to heal everything. It's understanding the tool that you're working with and its capabilities. So the rewiring program starts in mid-March, and I'm taking applications now for that small group coaching program. It is 3 months, rewiring your core wound patterns, and it is application only, jjflazanes.com/rewire. Now, if you're someone who needs some help being pushed into because you're either too afraid or you're too stubborn and you're not going to go sit on a mountain for a month or a week or a couple of days and fast and live off the land or do a silent meditation retreat for a week or 5 days or 3 days or travel across the world to, whatever. And again, I'm giving pretty extreme situations, but again, number 4 is major life experience. It's not minor, it's not comfortable, it's major life experience. So I have 2 offers for you there. Of course, we still have spots left as of the recording of this podcast for the Sacred Shamanic Journey with Christian and me in San Diego, end of February. And so if you're interested in that, please reach out. Spots are filling up. And I don't know when we'll do it again. So please don't treat this as if I'm going to do it all the time or you have access to it all the time. And that is a San Pedro journey. If you're interested in psilocybin, which is sort of my medicine of choice, that is a one-on-one VIP because it needs to be because of the nature of how the mushrooms work. I prefer to be more hands-on in terms of guiding the space and allowing the space and being there and available. So that is also available for people, a VIP journey with me. And then Yeah, so there's your 3 things. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out and let me know. I've given you a lot of stuff to think about. There's a lot of tools here: hypnosis, subliminal programs, the Rewire program, super learning, EFT, EMDR, chakra clearings, things like that. And then, of course, either the plant medicine work or putting together a major life experience that will transform you, that will really create some positive momentum to really make the changes that you want to. So your subconscious is reprogrammable. Your wounds can be healed. It will take time. It will take some effort, and it will take your commitment. But you can absolutely 100% change your life if you're willing to do the work.